The moment the trembling rookie nurse lifted her hand at the crowded airport and gave a small, nearly invisible signal, the hardened SEAL commander froze in his tracks, and in that single suspended second, fate began rewriting the lives of everyone involved. The terminal buzzed with travelers, rolling suitcases, and announcements echoing off the high ceilings, but for 23-year-old Grace Morgan, the world narrowed into a tunnel of fear, memory, and desperate hope. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure others could hear it, and yet she stood there, fragile and determined, risking everything on a silent gesture that no one else would ever notice. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small actions to change lives, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this remind us that even the quietest courage can echo across the world. Grace had never imagined herself as a hero. She was a new nurse, barely 6 months into her job at a large metropolitan hospital in Ohio, struggling to find her footing in a world that moved faster and hit harder than nursing school ever prepared her for. Every shift left her emotionally drained, her feet aching, and her mind haunted by the faces of patients she couldn't forget. She worked extra hours to help her mother pay off medical bills left by her late father, whose sudden heart failure had stolen both the family's stability and Grace's sense of safety. Life had taught her to be alert, to read subtle signs, and to trust her instincts, because missing a detail could mean losing everything. That instinct was what flared inside her at the airport. Grace was returning from a brief visit to her mother when she noticed a tall man in civilian clothes, his posture rigid, his eyes scanning the crowd with disciplined awareness. Most travelers moved with casual distraction, but this man carried the stillness of someone trained for chaos. The small tattoo barely visible under his sleeve and the faint scars along his knuckles confirmed what her intuition whispered. He was military, and not just any soldier. He was Special Forces. Commander Nathan Cole, though Grace did not yet know his name, was a decorated Navy SEAL on his way to brief senior hospital executives about a classified medical partnership program designed to save wounded service members. His mind was elsewhere, focused on the mission ahead, until Grace's subtle hand movement cut through the haze. The signal was one she had learned years ago during a traumatic incident involving her father and a violent patient in a crowded emergency room. It meant danger, silent warning, urgent attention. Nathan's training kicked in instantly. Without turning his head, he shifted his stance, scanning reflections in glass and polished floors, registering unusual movements. He caught the brief flash of fear in Grace's eyes, the tension in her shoulders, and the way she clutched her boarding pass as if it were an anchor. Something was wrong, and she was risking exposure to warn him. In the seconds that followed, airport security intercepted a man attempting to breach a restricted area, carrying concealed weapons and forged credentials. The threat was neutralized quietly, the terminal spared from panic, and most travelers never knew how close they had come to disaster. Grace slipped away into the crowd, her hands shaking, her breath uneven, her mind racing with what-ifs. She boarded her flight and returned to the hospital, convinced the incident would fade into anonymity, another unspoken chapter in her already heavy life. But destiny was not finished with her. 2 days later, Grace walked into her night shift to find the hospital buzzing with tension. Administrators hurried through hallways, security presence doubled, and whispers floated about a surprise visit from the hospital's CEO and an elite military delegation. Grace tried to focus on her duties, but anxiety twisted in her chest. By midnight, she was assigned to monitor a critical patient brought in under heavy guard. The moment she saw him, recognition surged. It was the man from the airport, now lying pale and motionless, his chest rising mechanically beneath sterile sheets. Nathan had collapsed from internal injury sustained during a classified operation overseas, injuries masked by adrenaline and duty until his body finally surrendered. Surgeons fought through the night to stabilize him, and Grace found herself at his bedside, checking vitals, adjusting lines, and whispering silent encouragement. Despite her exhaustion, she felt an unexplainable connection, as if their lives had brushed against each other for a reason neither fully understood yet. The following morning, the hospital CEO, Richard Holloway, arrived with an entourage of executives and military officials. Known for his icy professionalism and uncompromising standards, Holloway commanded fear and respect in equal measure. As he entered the intensive care unit, his attention fixed on Nathan's chart, his expression darkening. This partnership program was his legacy project, and the condition of its key liaison threatened everything he had built. Then his gaze shifted to Grace, standing quietly at the foot of the bed, and something in her posture made him pause. Holloway had received a classified incident report earlier that morning detailing the airport threat and the unidentified civilian who had alerted Commander Cole. Security footage had captured only partial angles, a fleeting glimpse of a young woman's silhouette. As Holloway studied Grace's face, the recognition struck him with chilling clarity. The room seemed to still as he realized the timid nurse before him was the same person who had prevented a catastrophe and possibly saved countless lives. In that moment, the unyielding CEO froze. His authority, his control, his carefully constructed composure faltered under the weight of gratitude and shock. Grace, unaware of the internal storm she had unleashed, simply lowered her eyes, assuming she had done something wrong. But Holloway's silence stretched, charged with meaning, until he finally asked for a private briefing. Within minutes, Grace's life veered into unfamiliar territory. She was summoned to a quiet office where military officials explained the gravity of the airport incident and her role in averting disaster. The reality hit her like a tidal wave. What she had perceived as a small, desperate gesture had altered the course of events on a scale she could barely comprehend. Fear mingled with pride, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. Holloway, moved by her courage and humility, made a decision that would redefine her future. He offered her full sponsorship into the hospital's advanced trauma nursing program, financial support for her family, and a permanent position within the elite emergency response unit. For Grace, it felt unreal. Just days earlier, she had been counting pennies to afford groceries. Now, doors she never dared to approach swung open before her. Yet the true reward was not the opportunity, but the knowledge that her instincts and compassion had mattered. She returned to Nathan's bedside, continuing her vigil through his slow recovery. Each day, his condition improved, and each night, Grace reflected on the fragile threads that wove human lives together. Weeks later, Nathan regained consciousness, his survival attributed to the swift medical intervention and Grace's meticulous care. Though hospital policy limited interactions, their unspoken bond remained. Grace saw in him the embodiment of sacrifice and resilience, while Nathan recognized in her the quiet bravery that often goes unseen. Their connection was not forged through dramatic confessions or grand gestures, but through shared silence, mutual respect, and the profound understanding that courage wears many faces. As months passed, Grace thrived in her new role, becoming a pillar of strength in the trauma unit. Her mother's burdens eased, her confidence blossomed, and the hospital gained a nurse whose empathy transformed patient care. Holloway, once distant and unapproachable, often cited Grace's story in leadership meetings as a reminder that true excellence begins with humanity. And so, in the vast machinery of modern life, it was a single, silent signal at an airport that set everything in motion. Grace's story became a testament to the idea that ordinary people, when guided by compassion and courage, can shape extraordinary outcomes. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe, because your support allows these stories of hope and resilience to reach others who may need them. Before the ending, we have one special request for you. Please comment the word kindness if you believe that even the smallest act of goodness can change the world. In the end, Grace returned to her small apartment after a long shift, watching the city lights shimmer through her window. She thought about her father, about the fear that once defined her days, and about the strength she had discovered within herself. She understood now that life's greatest moments often arrive unannounced, disguised as fleeting choices that test who we are. And as she drifted into exhausted sleep, a quiet peace settled in her heart, knowing that sometimes, a single brave gesture is enough to rewrite destiny.